Every surface shimmered with reflected starlight, caught and scattered by 1,000 hovering crystal shards. Each shard represented a conquered system, orbiting gently in the air like miniature suns. Great pillars carved from iridescent stone spiraled toward the vaulted ceiling, where faint auroras of psychic energy rippled like silk. Even the air seemed to hum with reverence, with the history of an empire so old that most of the galaxy's species were still crawling from their oceans when the Silurians first built ships. It was here, in this magnificent hall, that the bonding ceremony was about to begin. The nobles had gathered in ranks, glittering in ceremonial attire, all rigid with ritual dignity. Every alien courtier, scaled, feathered, crystalline. Oromorphous watched the raised dais where she stood. The princess. She was tall and slender, her movements smooth as flowing water, every step as deliberate as the ticking of an ancient clock. Layers of silver-gold silk wrapped her figure, folding and draping in intricate patterns that spoke her lineage and her destiny. But what drew every gaze, what froze every whisper, was her mask. It was no simple ornament. It was a smooth, pale oval of living metal, fused seamlessly to her face from brow to jawline. Etched across its surface were curling Silurian runes that glowed faintly with psychic containment wards. No mouth, no nose. Only 2 dark slits for eyes, glowing faintly from within like dying stars. The mask was legend. Some said it was placed on her at birth, because her true face bore the curse of the old void, and anyone who looked upon her would be driven mad. Others whispered that her visage was grotesque, a deformity so profound it would shame the royal bloodline forever. The more romantic said her beauty was too great, too perfect, and the mask kept the galaxy from falling to chaos. No one knew the truth, because no one, not guards, not attendants, not even the emperor, had seen her face since the day she was born. For years she had walked in silence through gilded halls, treated like a sacred relic, distant and untouchable. When she spoke, it was behind a veil of psychic static. When she moved, the world moved aside. No one dared to come close. No one dared to try, until the humans came. Ambassador Orion Hale stood among the throng of alien nobles, his human frame a little shorter than most, his posture relaxed in a way that felt utterly foreign here. He wore a crisp, formal uniform of deep navy with silver trim, his dark hair neatly combed, and a faint grin tugging at his lips, the kind of grin that looked like he was thinking about jumping off a cliff just to see if he could fly. Humanity was the newest member of the Galactic Compact, and the elder races treated them with amused suspicion. Too reckless, they said. Too emotional, too unpredictable, too young to understand the weight of ancient traditions. Where other species saw taboo, humans saw opportunity. Where others saw risk, humans saw a challenge. When the Emperor rose from his throne, a massive organic construct that pulsed like a slumbering beast, the hall fell into utter silence. His voice boomed like striking bells. My daughter, first star of the Silurian line, stands ready to bond. Who among you will join her soul thread to theirs and stand as her consort? No one moved. Not a claw, feather, or tendril twitched. The noble's eyes darted like frightened fish. The air grew tense, heavy, suffocating. The princess turned her masked gaze across the crowd. It was said that even through the mask, her stare could pierce minds. Dozens of beings flinched as it passed over them. Then, soft as a breeze, came a voice from the floor. I will. Every head turned. Orion Hale stepped forward from the ranks, boots ringing softly on the crystal floor. His grin had softened into something gentler, steadier. I will bond with her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The floating shards dimmed, as if the hall itself held its breath. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, twin storms of gold and black. You understand what you offer, human. Bonding joins not only lives but minds. To bond is to see her. To see her face, Orion met his gaze without flinching. I understand, he said calmly. And I don't care what she looks like. A hush deeper than vacuum fell. Even the princess tilted her head in surprise. The next day, the palace air seemed different charged, expectant. Like the hush before a storm, word of the humans' audacious offer had already swept through the Silurian capital, spiraling outward on psychic news streams until it reached even the furthest moons. It was all anyone spoke of, a human. A bond, the veiled princess. The elder nobles hissed and muttered in disbelief. The younger whispered with secret hope, wondering what kind of creature would dare such a thing. Orion Hale walked the corridors of the palace under a heavy escort, though not because they feared he would flee there, because many feared someone might try to kill him before he reached the temple. He seemed utterly unfazed, whistling under his breath, as if on a stroll, hands clasped behind his back. Human, growled the insectoid vizier, skittering beside him, her voice like dry leaves. You are either brave or profoundly ignorant. Maybe both, Orion replied cheerfully. It usually works out, the vizier's mandibles clacked in irritation. When her mask falls, your mind may break. He gave her a sideways look. If her face is powerful enough to break me, then maybe I'm just not strong enough for her. But I'd rather try and fail than spend my life wondering, and he meant it. The Temple of Weaving stood at the heart of the palace grounds, older than the empire itself. It was carved from living stone that grew in spirals, smooth as glass and warm to the touch. Etched with millions of glowing runes like veins of light, the vast chamber within was circular and open to the twin suns above, their golden rays diffused by a dome of shimmering energy. At the center stood a low dais, shaped like an open flower, its petals carved with ancient glyphs of union. She was already there. The princess stood perfectly still on the dais, her silken layers catching the morning light like molten metal. The mask gleamed cold and unyielding, its runes pulsing faintly as if in warning. Yet her fingers, long and graceful, trembled where they rested against her. Robes. Orion stepped into the circle without hesitation, the attending priests of bonding a half-dozen aged Silurians draped in translucent robes raised their hands in ritual salute. One spoke, voice soft but resonant, echoing through the chamber. To bond is to join souls. To bond is to share sight, memory, truth. No mask survives the soul's gaze. Do you both consent? I do, Orion said, clear and sure. The princess hesitated. Her voice came at last, muted and strange through the psychic dampening field. He does not know what I am. That's the point, Orion said gently, meeting the dark slits of her mask. Trust comes first. Understanding follows. The priests exchanged uncertain glances. The human spoke like he belonged here, like this wasn't madness. The princess's heart hammered within her chest. For her entire life she had been taught that to reveal herself was to destroy, that she was danger embodied. And yet this strange young creature stood before her utterly unafraid. He smiled, not mockery, not arrogance, just warmth. Whatever's under there, he said quietly, it's you, and that's enough. The words struck something deep within her. Part of her she hadn't even known was starving. Something small and fragile and hidden stirred awake. Consent, she whispered. The priests nodded solemnly and activated the weaving circle. Threads of light rose from the dais like strands of living silk, curling in the air, humming with psionic resonance. Orion and the princess each extended their hands and clasped each other's palms. The world vanished. Orion found himself floating in weightless space, a vast inner realm shaped by her mind. Darkness stretched in every direction, but not empty. It was the soft darkness of deep water. Memories drifted like glowing jellyfish. Brief glimpses of her childhood playing alone in silent courtyards. The emperor's distant gaze, the way others bowed but never spoke. The loneliness was overwhelming, an ocean that had never known a shore, and at its center, like a single candle against the void, was her. She stood before him, no longer masked, just herself. Faint light radiated from her form. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, afraid. Her voice echoed like wind through crystal. Aren't you afraid? Orion smiled, steady and kind. Of you? No, of missing my chance to know you. Terrified, something inside her broke not in pain, but in release. She took a breath. Then, trembling, she lifted her hands to her face and lowered the veil in the mind-space. In the real world, the priests gasped as the soul threads tightened and flared. The bond had begun. There was no turning back. The mind-space blazed with white gold light as the last threads of the bonding ritual sealed around them. Orion felt a jolt ripple through his senses, as the world of his body fell away completely, replaced by the vast inner realm of the princess's soul, where before there had been darkness and drifting memories. Now there was structure, an unfolding cathedral of luminous crystal rising from an endless ocean. Every towering arch shimmered like frozen starlight, and threads of her thoughts wove through the air like ribbons, each carrying faint echoes of her voice, her laughter, her fears, and there at the heart of it all, she stood, unmasked. Orion stared, not in horror, but in awe. Her form was like a living constellation. Her skin shimmered with colors that shifted as she moved, deep indigo to violet to radiant gold, as though nebulae lived beneath her surface. Fine, delicate patterns like comet trails traced down her cheeks and throat, glowing faintly. Her hair was not hair at all, but strands of soft light that drifted and coiled as if under water, glowing with the hue of newborn stars. And her eyes were entire galaxies, swirling depths of sapphire and silver, each iris flecked with distant bursts of color like supernova frozen in time. They were impossibly vast, impossibly gentle, and unbearably sad. This was the face that had been hidden from the galaxy. Not monstrous. Not cursed, simply wondrous and heartbreakingly vulnerable. She flinched as his gaze met hers, as though bracing for revulsion. Her voice trembled, echoing through the crystal halls. This is what I am. This is what they called a curse. Orion's grin was soft, wide, and absolutely sincere. This is what they feared? Stars, you're magnificent. She froze. The word echoed around them like a struck bell, magnificent, reverberating through every shard of her being. No one had ever said that to her. No one had even dared say anything at all. For her entire life, she had been told her face would destroy minds, that her beauty was a poison, that she was too dangerous to be seen. Yet this strange human looked at her like she was the first sunrise after 1,000 years of night. You are not afraid? She whispered. Not even a little, he said. Honestly, I'm more afraid I might blink and miss something. She blinked at that, then laughed. A small, startled laugh that rang like chimes in the deep. The sound shook the mind space. Crystal arches flared with color, and then she saw him. Through the soul thread, she felt his essence unfold before her. His mind was nothing like the ancient, methodical minds of her people. It burned, bright, chaotic, wild. His thoughts ran like roaring rivers, crashing against every obstacle with relentless energy. She saw memories dizzying, climbs up sheer cliffs, laughter in storm winds, defiant grins on battlefields. Fear existed in him, yes, but it was fuel, not a cage. He carried scars, but wore them like medals, and beneath all of it, something else. Loneliness, a familiar kind of loneliness. He feared dying alone. He feared being unseen, unknown. He longed not for conquest or glory, but for connection, for someone to stand beside him and see all of him. Her breath caught. They were so different, yet the same. The bond pulsed between them like a heartbeat, stronger and faster, and somewhere far away, in the physical world, the mask that had sealed her face since infancy began to crack. The priests gasped. The smooth, living metal split down the center with a hiss of escaping psychic energy, fracturing into glimmering dust that drifted away like fireflies. The veil was gone. The nobles watching from the temple balcony staggered back in shock. They had braced for horror, for something broken and twisted, malformed beyond comprehension. Instead, they saw her. The princess's skin shimmered like liquid starlight. Her hair flowed like glowing silk, and her eyes silenced the hall. She's beautiful, one of the elder nobles whispered, voice shaking. The emperor himself stood as if carved from stone, golden black eyes wide. He had never imagined this. He had hidden her all her life to protect the empire from imagined shame, never realizing he had instead hidden its brightest light. And through it all, Orion stood unwavering. He didn't flinch. He didn't bow. He just looked at her with the same calm wonder he had worn from the beginning, like a man standing at the edge of the universe. Finally, seeing the stars in that gaze, she saw something she had never known. She was not feared. She was loved, and in that moment, for the first time in her life, the princess smiled. For a heartbeat, there was silence, pure, crystalline silence. The nobles in the balconies stood frozen, their jeweled plumage and fractal limbs motionless. The priests of bonding knelt in stunned reverence. Even the air seemed to hesitate, as if the universe itself was unsure how to proceed. Then the storm hit. 100 voices erupted at once. Shouts, hisses, clicking mandibles, grinding chitin. Shock twisted into fear, and fear into fury. She reveals the cursed face. The old prophecies warned of this. This human has bewitched her. This cannot stand. Guards surged forward, energy lances sparking, wings flaring. Psychic static rippled across the temple like the first rumble of an earthquake. The priests cried out for calm, but their voices were swallowed by the chaos. Only 2 figures stood utterly still in the center of the storm. The princess, glowing like a living star, and the human, standing calmly at her side. Orion didn't move, didn't speak, not yet. He simply stood there, solid as a mountain, while the world fractured around them. The emperor rose from the balcony like a thundercloud given form. His towering frame seemed to bend the light around him. His voice rolled through the hall like collapsing stone. Enough. Silence fell like a blade. Even the guards froze mid-dash stride. The emperor descended the steps, each one shaking the floor. His eyes twin maelstroms of molten gold and black fixed on Orion with killing intensity. "You," he said. It was not a question. It was a sentence. "You have shattered what you cannot comprehend. You have broken sacred seals older than your species. You have unleashed what should never be seen." Orion met that gaze without blinking. "No," he said softly. "I didn't break her. I freed her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. To speak so to the emperor was unthinkable, suicidal. But Orion kept going, his voice steady as stone. "You locked her away because you were afraid, not of a curse, not of destruction. You were afraid of change." He turned, looking at the nobles, the priests, the guards, all of them staring like frightened animals. "You told yourselves it was mercy, that you were protecting her, but you weren't. You were protecting yourselves from what her light might reveal about your shadows." The emperor's eyes narrowed dangerously, psychic power crackling around him like a storm about to break. "Human," he rumbled, "your defiance courts annihilation." Beside Orion, the princess finally stirred. She stepped forward, not timidly now, but with a slow, deliberate grace that commanded attention. Her bare face glowed softly in the dim temple light. Each motion sent ripples of shimmering color across her skin. "I am not a curse," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. It filled every corner of the chamber, every mind, every heart. "I am your daughter," she continued, looking at the emperor. "Your heir. And you hid me. You told me I was dangerous, unfit. You caged me in silence and shadow until I forgot what it meant to be alive." Her gaze swept the assembly. Dozens flinched as her eyes, those swirling galaxies, met theirs. "No more," she said. She reached out, and Orion took her hand without hesitation. The bond thread pulsed between them, bright and strong. "I will not be your shame. I will not be your secret. If my face brings change, then let change come." The hall trembled with the force of her words. The nobles shifted uneasily. For centuries, they had bowed to the emperor's will, their every motion scripted by ancient ritual. Yet now seeing the raw truth of her, some felt something awaken in them. a longing, a dangerous spark of hope. The Emperor stared at her for a long, long moment. His aura writhed with suppressed power. Then slowly, he spoke. "You would defy your blood." "I would define it," she said. Silence. Then the Emperor turned away sharply, cloak swirling, voice cold. "Very well. You have chosen your path. Walk it. If you can survive," he swept from the hall. And his guards followed like a retreating tide. The nobles murmured frantically as they dispersed, like a shaken flock of jeweled birds. Some glared with hatred, some with fear, and just a few watched the princess with wonder. When the last echoes faded, the temple stood quiet again. The princess let out a shuddering breath she hadn't known she was. "Holding, you stood with me," she whispered. "Always," Orion said simply, and as they left the temple together, hand in hand. The whole empire quivered because for the first time, the untouchable princess had chosen someone, and for the first time, she was free. The silence that followed the unveiling was almost unbearable. Time seemed to freeze within the crystal throne chamber as Lysera stood exposed before the council, her veil lying like a fallen banner at her feet. Every pair of eyes, multifaceted, slitted, or glowing, locked onto her. Some widened in disbelief, others narrowed in confusion, and a few flickered with what might have been fear. Lysera's face, once the subject of endless speculation and rumor, was neither monstrous nor grotesque. It was delicate yet strong, marked by faint, swirling bioluminescent patterns that shifted slowly across her lavender skin like moonlight on water. But it was her eyes that captured them, two pools of deep star-flecked silver, ancient and young all at once, holding storms and serenity together. They were beautiful, but not in any traditional sense her people valued. They were simply real. "Behold," Lysera said, her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "This is the face you feared, the face you whispered of as cursed or tainted or broken. It is only mine, and it harms no one." Gasps, soft chittering, and the low thrum of counselors communicating through private channels echoed through the hall. No one dared speak aloud until Elias stepped forward. He approached her slowly, not as one might approach something fragile or sacred, but as someone approaching an equal. He stopped at her side, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and looked around at the stunned chamber. "You see," he said simply, "the mystery was never the danger. Your fear was." A ripple of murmurs broke out across the hall. Some counselors frowned, others nodded faintly. One even lowered their crest in silent acknowledgement. Lysera felt her throat tighten. For years, she had prepared herself for this day with cold resolve, convinced she could endure their judgment. But standing unveiled now, she realized what terrified her most wasn't their hatred, it was their indifference. If they saw her and turned away, if she meant nothing, then all her isolation had been for nothing. But Elias was here, and he was not turning away. With deliberate care, he reached for her hand. Lysera hesitated only a moment before letting his fingers intertwine with hers. A collective gasp swept the chamber. Interspecies bonds were sacred, their formation a rare and monumental event. For him to initiate it so openly, in front of the entire Galactic Council. It was a declaration louder than any speech, by ancient law, intoned the High Speaker at last, its many eyes blinking in unison. A voluntary bond overrides all custom. "Do you, Elias of Terra, confirm your intent?" "I do," Elias said firmly. "And you, Lysera, of House Valen?" Lysera's voice trembled, but her words were clear. "I do." The chamber filled with a sudden burst of golden light as the council's binding seals acknowledged the oath. A thin filament of energy coiled gently around their joined hands before fading away, leaving behind a warmth that pulsed between them like a shared heartbeat. Silence lingered for several long breaths. Then, unexpectedly, applause soft at first, then growing. Not all joined in, but enough did that the walls vibrated faintly with the sound. Lysera blinked rapidly, realizing tears had gathered in her eyes. She turned to Elias, who simply smiled as if this was all the most natural thing in the universe. You didn't even flinch, she whispered. Why would I? He murmured back. I didn't fall for your veil. I fell for you. Her breath caught. For a moment the noise of the hall vanished, and there was only him, the warmth of his hand, the steady weight of his presence. The council would debate this for cycles, she knew. There would be protests, political fallout, maybe even attempts to undo their bond. But none of that mattered anymore. She had walked into this hall as a secret, as a symbol of fear. She was leaving it as someone loved. And for the first time in her life, the weight on her chest lifted. Liz Era smiled, unafraid, and walked out of the chamber hand in hand with the human who had chosen her anyway.